author's foreword of More Misrepresentative Men. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. More Misrepresentative Men by Harry Graham. Author's foreword to the publisher. When honest men are all in bed, we poets at our desks are toiling to earn a modicum of bread and keep the pot a-boiling. We weld together bit by bit the fabric of our labored wit. We see with eyes of frank dismay the coming of this autumn season, when bards are driven to display their feast of rhyme and reason. With hectic brain and loosened collar, we chase the too elusive dollar, while publishers in search of grist despise our masterly inaction and shake their faces in our fist, demanding satisfaction. We view with vague or vacant mind the grim agreements we have signed. For though a willing public gives its timely share of cash assistance, the author, like the dentist, lives a hand-to-mouth existence, and publishers, those modern Circes, make pig's-ear purses of his verses. Behold, how ill, how thin and pale, the features of the furtive jester, compelled by contracts to curtail his moments of siesta. A true white knight is he today, nuit blanche, as Stevenson would say. Ah, surely he has labored well, constructing this immortal sequel, a work which no one could excel, and very few can equal, a volume which, I dare to say, is epoch-making in its way. When other poets' work is not, these verses shall retain their label. When Hereford is a thing forgot, an aid, an ancient fable, when Goops no longer give a sign of Burgess's empurpled kine. My publishers, I love you so, you well-secreted virtues viewing, who never let your right hand know whom your left hand is doing, who hold me firmly in your grip and crack your checkbook like a whip. My publishers, make no mistake, you have in me an avis rara. So write a princely check and make it payable to bearer. I love you as I said before, but oh, I love your money more. End of author's foreword.
Publisher's Preface of More Misrepresentative Men by Harry Graham. Read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. To the Author. Voracious author, gorged with gold, your grasping greed shall not avail. In vain you venture to unfold your false prehensile tale. I view in scorn, unmixed with awe, the width of your capacious maw. On me the onus has to fall of your malevolent effusions. 'Tis I who bear the brunt of all your libellous allusions. To bolster up your turgid verse, I jeopardize my very purse. You do not hesitate to fleece the publisher you scorn to thank, and when you manage to decrease his balance at the bank, your face is lighted up with greed, and you are lantern-jawed indeed. Yet will I still heap coals of fire until your coiffure is embedded, and you at last perchance shall tire of growing so hot-headed, and realize that being funny is not a mere affair of money. And so, in honor of your powers, a fragrant bouquet will I pick, of rare exotics, blossoms, flowers, of speech and rhetoric. I'll add a thistle, if I may, and round the whole a wreath of bay. The blossoms for your buttonhole, to mark your affluent condition, exotics to inspire your soul to further composition. Come, set the bays upon your brow. Well, eat a thistle anyhow. End of Publisher's Preface. This recording is in the public domain.
Robert Burns by Harry Graham. Read for LibriVox.org by Alan Mapstone. The jingling rhymes of Dr. Watts excite the reader's just impatience. He wearies of Sir Walter Scott's melodious verbal collocations, and with advancing years he learns to love the simpler style of Burns. Too much the careworn critic knows of that obscure robustious diction, which like a form of fungus grows amid the Kailyard school of fiction. In Crockett's cryptic caves one sighs for Burns' clear and spacious skies. Though no aspersions need be cast on Barrie's wealth of wit fantastic, creator of that unsurpassed, if most minute ecclesiastic, yet even here the eye discerns no master hand like that of Burns. The works of Campbell and the rest exhale a sanctimonious odour. Their vintage is but schnapps at best. Their Scotch is simply Scotch and soda. They cannot hope, like Burns, to win that touch which makes the whole world kin. Though some may sing of Neil Munro and virtues in Maclaren's sea, or want but little here below, and want that little Lang, maybe, each renegade at length returns to praise the peerless powers of Burns. His verse, as all the world declares, and Tennyson himself confesses, the radiance of the dewdrop shares, the berry's perfect shape possesses, and even William Wordsworth praises the magic of his faultless phrases. But he whose books bedeck our shelves, whose lofty genius we adore so, was only human like ourselves, perhaps indeed a trifle more so, and joined a thirst that naught could quench to morals which were frankly French. And every night he made his way, with boon companions bent on frolic, to inns of ill repute, where lay refreshments chiefly alcoholic. But I decline to raise your gorges, describing these nocturnal orgies. Of love affairs he knew no end, so long and ardently he flirted, and e'en the least suspicious friend would feel a trifle disconcerted when Burns was sitting with his sposa, as thick as thieves on Vallombrosa. A Cockney child who found him thus, and showed some conjugal alarm, when Burns implored him not to fuss, inquiring calmly, "Where's the harm?" replied at once with perfect taste, "The harm is round my consort's waist." "A poor thing but my own," said he, his fair but fickle bride denoting, and she, with scathing repartee, assented, wilfully misquoting, though carefully brought up like Jonah, "A poorer thing, and yet my owner." The most bucolic hearts were burnt by Burns' amatory glances. The most suburban spinsters learned to welcome his abrupt advances. When Burns was on his knee, 'twas said, they wished that they were there instead. They loved him from the first, in spite of angry parents' interference. They deemed his courtship so polite, so captivating his appearance, so great his charm, so apt his wit. In local parlance, Burns was it. The rustic maids from far and wide encouraged his unwise flirtations. For love of Burns they moped and sighed, and while their nearest male relations were up in arms, the sad thing is that they themselves were up in his. His crest a mug with open lid, the kind in vogue with ancient druids, inscribed Amari aliquid, which means I'm very fond of fluids. On either side, as meet supporters, the village blacksmith's lovely daughters. Men were deceivers ever true, as Shakespeare says, hey nonny nonny, but one should always keep in view that tout comprendre c'est tout pardonner. In judging poets, it suffices to scan their verses, not their vices. The poets of the present time attempt their feeble imitations, are economical of rhyme, and lavish with reiterations, the while a patient public swallows a border ballad much as follows. Jamie lad, I love ye weel, Jamie lad, I love nae ither, Jamie lad, I love ye weel, like a mother. Jamie's ganging doon the burn, Jamie's ganging doon whatever, Jamie's ganging doon the burn to Strathpeffer. Jamie's coming hame today, Jamie's coming hame, I'm thinking, Jamie's coming home today, day o' drinking. Heck, Jamie, losh, Jamie, dinna greet sae sair, gin ye canna win a shanna, see ye lassie mair. Wahoo, wah-hey, Strathpeffer. I give you now as antidote some lines which I myself indited. Carnegie, when he read them, wrote to say that he was quite delighted. Their pathos cut him to the quick, their humour almost made him sick. The kays a moopin' i' the mirk, and gin the thole agin the kirk. I'll gal ye touch her hame frae work, say street and primsy. In vain the lavrock leaves the snaw, the sonsy cowslips blithely blaw, the elbuck weeps adoon the shaw, or while a whimsy, the cootie moorcocks crousely crow, the mawkins track their food fu braw, I gie their whams a random paw, for all their skilpie. For wha say gleg and din, to butt the ben or loop the lin, or scrawl aboon the tiling pin, say fray and gilpie. Och, snood the sporran round my lap, the cairngorm clap and ilka cap. Och, hand me o'er my long claymore, twa bannocks and a bap. Wahoo, twa bannocks and a bap. O fellow Scotsmen near and far, renowned for health and good digestion, for all that makes you what you are, but are you really? That's the question. Be grateful while the world endures that Burns was countryman of yours. And hand in alien land, foregather with your fellow cronies to masticate the haggis, canned, at Scottish conversationes, where, flushed with wine and auld lang syne, you worship at your country's shrine. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
William Waldorf Astor by Harry Graham. Read for LibriVox.org by Winnifred Assmann. How blessed a thing it is to die, for country's sake as bards have sung. How sweet pro patria mori, to quote the vulgar Latin tongue, and yet to him the palm we give, who for his fatherland can live. Historians have explained to us, in terms that never can grow cold, how well the bold Horatius played bridge in the brave days of old, and we can read of hosts of others, from Spartan boys to Roman mothers. But nowhere has the student got, from poet, pedagogue, or pastor, the picture of a patriot so truly typical as Astor, and none has ever shown a greater affection for his alma mater. With loyalty to fatherland, his heart inflexible as starch is, whene'er he hears upon a band the too prolific Sousa's marches, and from his eyes a tear he wipes each time he sees the stars and stripes. Though others roam across the foam to European health resorts, the fact that there's no place like home is foremost in our hero's thoughts. And all in vain have people tried to lure him from his ain fireside. Let tourists travel, near or far, by wayward breezes widely blown. He stops at the Astoria, a poor thing, Shakespeare, but his own, and nothing that his friends may do can drag him from Fifth Avenue. The Western heiress is content to scale, as a prospective bride, the bare 6-story tenement where foreign pauper peers reside. But men like Astor all disparage the so-called Morgan attic marriage. The rich Chicago millionaire may buy a mansion in Belgravia, have footmen there with powdered hair and frigidly correct behavior, but marble stairs and plate of gold leave Astor absolutely cold. The lofty ducal residence that fronts some Surrey riverside would wound his socialistic sense and pain his patriotic pride. He would not change for Castle's Highland his cabbage patch on Coney Island. A statue in some Roman street, a palace of Venetian gilding, appear to him not half so sweet as any modern Vanderbuilding. He views without an envious throe the wolf that suckled Romeo. Roast beef or frogs or sauerkraut their meed of praise from some may win. Our hero cannot do without peanuts and clams and terrapin. Away from home his soul would lack the cocktail and the canvas back. Not his to walk the crowded Strand, mid busy London's jar and hum. On quiet Broadway he would stand, saying Americanus some. His smile so tranquil, so seraphic, small wonder that it stops the traffic. Who would not be a man like he, this lapse of grammar pray forgive, so simply satisfied to be, contented with his lot to live? Whether or not it be, I wot, a little lot or quite a lot. Content with any kind of fare, with any tiny piece of earth, so long as he can find it there within the land that gave him birth. Content with simple beans and pork, if he may eat them in New York. O persons who have made your pile and spend it far across the seas, like landlords of the Emerald Isle, denounced notorious absentees, I pray you imitate the master and stay at home like Mr. Astor. But if you go abroad at all and leave your fatherland behind you, without an effort to recall the sentimental ties that bind you, I should be grateful if you could contrive to stay away for good. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Henry VIII by Harry Graham. Read for LibriVox.org by Carol Galbraith. With Stevenson we must agree, who found the world so full of things, that all should be, or so said he, as happy as a host of kings. Yet few so fortunate as not to envy bluff King Henry's lot. A polished monarch through and through, though somewhat lacking in religion, who joined a courtly man or two, the figure of a pouter pigeon. He was, at time of feast or revel, a perfect little devil. But though his vices, I'm afraid, are hard for modern minds to swallow, two lofty virtues he displayed, which we should do our best to follow: a passion for domestic life, a cult for what is called the wife. He sought his spouses north and south 6 times, to make a misquotation. He managed at the cannon's mouth to win a bubble reputation. and every time from last to first his matrimonial bubble burst. 6 times with wide, self-conscious smile and well-blacked buttoned boots he entered the Abbey's bust-congested aisle, with every eye upon him centered. 6 times he heard, and not alone, the march of Mr. Mendelssohn. 6 separate times, or 3 times twice, in order to complete the marriage, mid painful showers of boots and rice, he sought the shelter of his carriage. 6 times the bride beneath her veil looked beautiful but somewhat pale. Within the limits of one reign, 6 females of undaunted bearing, 2 Annes, 3 Catherines, and a Jane, enjoyed the privilege of sharing a conjugal career so checkered, it almost constitutes a record. Yet sometimes it occurs to me that Henry missed his true vocation, a husband by profession he, a widower by occupation, and honestly it seems a pity he didn't live in Salt Lake City. For there he could have put in force his plural marriage views unbaffled, nor had recourse to dull divorce, nor sought the service of the scaffold, nor looked for peace, nor found release in any partner's predecease. Had Henry been alive today, he might have hired a timely motor, and sent each wife in turn to stay within the confines of Dakota, that state whose rigid marriage law is eulogized by Bernard Shaw. But Henry's simple days are done, and in the present generation, a wife is seldom wooed and won by prospects of decapitation. For nowadays, when woman weds, it is the men who lose their heads. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Alton B. Parker by Harry Graham. Read for LibriVox.org by mleigh. Those Roman fathers long ago established a sublime tradition, who gave the man behind the hoe his proud proconsular position. When Cincinnatus left his hens and beat his plowshares into pens, his modern prototype we see, descended from some humble attic, the presidential nominee of those whose views are democratic. From millionaire to billiard maker, they plumped their votes for Central Parker. A member of the sterner sex, possessing neither wealth nor beauty, but gifted with a really extraordinary sense of duty. In honors list I place him first, with Caesar's wife and Mr. Hearst. From childhood's day this son of toil, since first he laid aside his rattle, was wont to cultivate the soil, or milk his father's kindly cattle, to groom the pigs, drive crows away, or teach the bantams how to lay. This sprightly lad his parents' pet, with tastes essentially bucolic, eschewed the straight-cut cigarette, and shunned refreshments alcoholic. His simple pleasure 'twas to plumb the deep-laid joys of chewing gum. As local pedagogue he next attained to years of indiscretion, to preach the Solomonian text, so popular with that profession, which honors whom and what it teaches, more in the observance than the breeches. This sprightly Parker soon one sees, head of a legal institution, enjoying huge retaining fees as counsel for the prosecution. Advice to lawyers, meum non est. Get on, get honor, then get honest. Behold him, then, like comet, shoot beyond the bounds of birth or station, and gain as jurist of repute a continental reputation. Don't mix him with that triple star, which lights a more unworthy bar. A proud position now is his, a judge arrayed in moral ermine, as from the bench he sentences his fellow man and other vermin, and does his duty to his neighbor by giving him 6 months' hard labor. On knotty questions of finance, He bears aloft the golden standard, for he whose motto is advance, to baser coin has never pandered. No eulogist of war is he, retrenchment is his dernier cri. But though to his convictions true, with strength like concentrated Eno, he did his very utmost to emancipate the Filipino. Of fickle public chose another, who called the colored coon his brother. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Euclid by Harry Graham. Read for LibriVox.org by Winnifred Assmann. When Egypt was a first-class power, when Ptolemy was king, that is, whose benefices used to shower on all the local charities, and by his liberal subscriptions was always spoiling the Egyptians. The Alexandrine school enjoyed a proud and primary position for training scholars not devoid of geometric erudition, where arithmetical fanatics could even live in mathematics. The best informed historians name this institution the possessor of one who occupied with fame the post of principal professor, who had a more expansive brain than any man before Hall Caine. No complex sums of huge amounts perplexed his algebraic knowledge. With ease he balanced the accounts of his at times insolvent college. He was, without the least romance, a very Blondin of finance. In pencil on his shirt cuff he, without a moment's hesitation, elucidated easily the most elaborate calculation. His washing got, I needn't mention, the local laundry's best attention. Behind a manner mild as mouse, blue-spectacled and inoffensive, he hid a judgment and a nous as overwhelming as extensive, and cloaked a soul immune from wrong beneath an ample ong bong pong. To rows of conscientious youths, whom 'twas his duty to take care of, he loved to prove the truth of truths which they already were aware of. They learnt to look politely bored where modern students would have snored. To show that 2 and 2 make 4, that all is greater than a portion, requires no dialectic lore, nor any cerebral contortion. The public's faith in facts was steady before the days of Mrs. Eddy. But what was hard to overlook, from which society still suffers, was all the trouble Euclid took to teach the game of bridge to duffers, insisting, when he got a quorum, on pawns, he called it, asinorum. The guileless methods of his game provoked his partner's strongest strictures. He hardly knew the cards by name, but realized that some had pictures, exhausting everybody's patience by his perpetual revocations. For weary hours in deep concern, o'er dummy's hand he loved to linger, denoting every card in turn with timid, indecisive finger, and stopped to say at each delay, "I really don't know what to play." He sought at any cost to win his every suit in turn unguarding. He trumped his partner's best card in, his own egregiously discarding, remarking sadly when in doubt, "I quite forgot the king was out." Alert opponents always knew by what the look upon his face was, when safety lay in leading through, and where, of course, the fatal ace was, assuring the complete successes of bold but hazardous finesses. But nowadays we find no trace, from distant Assouan to Cairo, to mark the place where dwelt a race mistaught by so absurd a tyro, and nothing but occult inscriptions recall the sports of past Egyptians. Yes, autre temps, and autre murs, où sont, indeed, les neiges d'antan. The modern native much prefers debauching in some café chantant, nor ever shows the least ambition to solve a single proposition. O Euclid, luckiest of men, you knew no English interloper, for Alice Garden was not then the pleasure ground of Alice Loper, nor, broth-like, had your country's looks been spoilt by an excess of cooks. The Nile to your untutored ears discoursed in dull but tender tones, not yours the modern dahabeers, supplied with strident gramophones, imploring in a loud refrain Bill Bailey to come home again. Your cars, the older-fashioned sort, and drawn, perhaps, by alligators, were not the modern juggernaut child dog and space obliterators, those stormy petrels of the land which deal decease on either hand. No European tourist wags defiled the desert's dusky face with orange peel and paper bags, those emblems of a cultured race, or cut the noble name of Jones on tombs which held a monarch's bones. O Euclid, could you see today the sunny clime you once frequented, and note the way we moderns play the game you thoughtfully invented, the knowledge of your guilt would force you to feelings of internal nausea. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
J. M. Barrie by Harry Graham. Read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. The briny tears and bidden start at mention of my hero's name. Was ever set so huge a heart within so small a frame? So much of tenderness and grace confined in such a slender space? O tiniest of tiny men, so wise, so whimsical, so witty, whose magic little fairy pen is steeped in human pity, whose humor plays so quaint a tune from Peter Pan to Pantaloon. So wide a sympathy has he, such kindliness without an end, that children clamber on his knee and claim him as a friend. They somehow know he understands and doesn't mind their sticky hands. And so they swarm about his neck with energy that nothing wearies, assured that he will never check their ceaseless flow of queries, and grateful with a warm affection for his avuncular protection. And when his watch he opens wide, or beats them all at blowing bubbles, they tell him how the dormouse died, and all their tiny troubles, and drag him, if he seems depressed, to see the baby squirrel's nest. For hidden treasure he can dig, pursue the Indians in the wood, feed the prolific guinea pig with inappropriate food, do all the things that mattered so in happy days of long ago. All this he can achieve and more, for 'neath the magic of his brain the young are younger than before. The old grow young again, to dream of beauty and of truth, for hearts that win eternal youth. Fat apoplectic men I know, with well-developed little berries, look almost human when they show their faith in Barrie's fairies. Their blank lethargic faces lighten in admiration of his Crichton. To lovers who with fingers cold attempt to fan some dying ember, he brings the happy days of old, and bids their hearts remember, recalling in romantic fashion the tenderness of earlier passion. And modern matrons who can find so little leisure for the nursery, whose interest in babykind is eminently cursory, new views on motherhood acquire from Alice sitting by the fire, while men of every sort of kind, at times of sunshine or of trouble, in sentimental Tommy find their own amazing double. To each in turn the memory comes of some beloved forgotten thrums. To Barrie's literary art that strong poetic sense is clinging, which hears in every human heart a late lark faintly singing, a bird that bears upon its wing the promise of perpetual spring. Materialists may labor much at problems for the modern stage. His simpler methods reach and touch the young of every age, and first and second childhood meet on common ground at Barrie's feet. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Omar Khayyam by Harry Graham. Read for LibriVox.org by Mapstone. Though many a great philosopher has earned the epicure's diploma, not one of them, as I aver, so much deserved the prize as Omar. For he, without the least misgiving, combined high thinking and high living. He lived in Persia long ago, upon a somewhat slender pittance, and Persia is, as you may know, the home of shahs and fubsy kittens, a quite consistent habitat, since shah, of course, is French for cat. He lived, as I was saying when you interrupted impolitely, not loosely like his fellow men, but vice versa rather tightly. He drank his share, so runs the story, and other people's, con amore. A great astronomer, no doubt, he often found some constellation which others could not see without profuse internal irrigation, and snakes he saw and crimson mice, until his colleagues rang for ice. Omar, who owned a length of throat as dry as the proverbial drummer, and quite believed that, let me quote, one swallow does not make a summer, supplied a model to society of frank persistent insobriety. Ah, fill the cup with nectar sweet, until, when indisposed for more, your puzzled inadhesive feet elude the smooth revolving floor. What matter doubts, despair, or sorrow? Today is yesterday, tomorrow. Oblivion in the bottle win, let finger bowls with vodka foam, and seek the open port within some dignified inebriate's home, assuming there with kingly air a crown of vine leaves in your hair. A book of verse, my own for choice, a slice of cake, some ice cream soda, a lady with a tuneful voice beside me in some dim pagoda. A cellar, if I had the key, would be a paradise to me. In cosy seat with lots to eat, and bottles of Lafitte to fracture, and by the by, the word Lafitte recalls the mode of manufacture. I contemplate at easy distance the troublous problems of existence. For even if it could be mine to change creation's partial scheme, to mould it to a fresh design, more nearly that of which I dream, most probably my weak endeavour would make more mess of it than ever. So let us stock our cellar shelves with balm to lubricate the throttle, for heaven help those who help themselves, so help yourself and pass the bottle. What, would you quarrel with my moral? Waiter, let's have another bottle. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Andrew Carnegie by Harry Graham. Read for LibriVox.org by Alan Mapstone. In Caledonia, stern and wild, whence scholars, statesmen, bards have sprung, where every little barefoot child correctly lisps his mother tongue, and lingual solecisms betoken that Scotch is drunk as well as spoken. There dwells a man of iron nerve, a millionaire without a peer, possessing that supreme reserve which stamps the caste of Vere de Vere, and marks him out to human ken as one of nature's noblemen. Like other self-made persons, he is surely much to be excused, since they have had no choice, you see, of the material to be used. But when his noiseless fabric grew, he builded better than he knew. A democrat whose views are frank, to him success alone is vital. He deems the wealthy cabman's rank as good as any other title. To him the post of postman betters the trade of other men of letters. The relative who seeks to wed some nice but indigent patrician, he urges to select instead a coachman of assured position. Since safety matches, you'll agree, strike only on the box, says he. At Skibo Castle by the sea, a splendid palace he has built, equipped with all the luxury of plush, of looking-glass and gilt, a style which Ruskin much enjoyed, and christened Early German Lloyd. With milking stools and ribbon screens, the floor is covered, well I know. The walls are thick with tambourines, hand-painted many years ago. Ah, how much taste our forebears had, and nearly all of it was bad. Each flower-embroidered boudoir suite, each cosy corner set apart, was modelled in the Regent Street emporium of suburban art. O liberty, I quote with shame, the crimes committed in thy name. But though his mansion now contains a swimming bath, a barrel organ, electric lights, and even drains as good as those of Mr. Morgan, there was a time when Andrew C. was not obsessed by LSD. Across the seas he made his pile, in Pittsburgh, where, I've understood, you have to exercise some guile to do the very slightest good. But he kept doing good by stealth, and doubtless blushed to find it wealth. And now his private hobby 'tis to meet a starving people's need by making gifts to libraries to those who never learnt to read. Rich mental banquets he provides for folks with famishing insides. In education's hallowed name he pours his opulent libations. His vast deserted halls of fame increase the gaiety of nations. But still the slums are plague infested, the hospitals remain congested. Carnegie, should your kindly eye this foolish book of verses meet, please order an immense supply to make your libraries complete, and register its author's name within your princely halls of fame. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
King Cophetua by Harry Graham, read for LibriVox.org by Patrick Wallace. To sing of King Cophetua I am indeed unwilling, for none of his adventures are particularly thrilling. Nor, as I hardly need to mention, am I addicted to invention. The story of his roving eye, you must already know it, since it has been narrated by Lord Tennyson, the poet. I could a moving tale unfold, but it has been so often told. But since I wish my friends to see my early education, if Tennyson will pardon me a somewhat free translation, I'll try if something can't be sung in someone else's mother tongue. Cophetua and the Beggar Maid, so runs the story's title. An explanation, I'm afraid, is absolutely vital, expressed, as I need hardly mention, in 4 a.m. or early French. Les bras posés sur la poitrine,
lui fait l'apparence divine. Enfin, elle a très bonne mine. Elle arrive, ne portant pas de sabots, ni même de bas, pieds nus, au roi Cophetua. Le roi alors, couronne sur tête, vêtu de ses robes de fête, va la rencontrer et l'arrête. On dit, tiens, il y en a de quoi, je ferais ça si c'était moi. Il sait s'amuser donc, ce roi. Ainsi que la lune brille aux cieux, cet enfant lui de mieux en mieux, quand même ses habits soient vieux. En voilà un qui loue ses yeux, un autre admire ses cheveux, et tout le monde est amoureux. Car on n'a jamais vu là-bas un charme tel que celui-là. Alors le bon Cophetua jure, la pauvre mendiante, si séduisante, si charmante, sera ma femme, ou bien ma tante. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Joseph F. Smith by Harry Graham. Read for LibriVox.org by Jack Teague. Though, to the ordinary mind, the weight of marriage ties is such that many mere male mortals find one wife enough, if not too much, I see no reason to abuse a person holding other views. Though most of us, at any rate, have not acquired the plural habits, which we are apt to delegate to Eastern potentates or rabbits, we should regard with open mind the more luxuriously inclined. In Salt Lake City dwells a man who deems monogamy a myth, one of that too prolific clan which glories in the name of Smith, a prophet, seer, and revelator, with the appearance of a waiter. This hoary patriarch contrives to thrive in manner most bewildering, with close on 6 wives and nearly 100 children, and views with unaffrighted eyes the burden of domestic ties. To him all spouses seem the same, each one a model of the graces. He knows his children all by name, but cannot recollect their faces, a minor point, since, I suppose, each one has got its pauper's nose. They are denied to me and you, such old-world luxuries as his, when, after work, he hastens to the bosoms of his families, each offspring joining with the others in what is home without 5 mothers? Such strange surroundings would retard most ordinary men's digestions, 5 ladies all conversing hard, and 50 children asking questions, besides the tragic final straw, 5 separate mammas-in-law. What difficulties there must be to find a telescopic mansion, for each successive family the space sufficient for expansion. But that, said Kipling in his glory, but that is quite another story. The sailor who, from lack of thought, or else a too diffuse affection, has for a wife in every port an unappeasing predilection, would designate as simply great the mode of life in Utah State. The gay Lothario, too, who makes his mad but meaningless advances to more than one fair maid and takes a large variety of chances, need have no fear in such a place of any breach of promise case. With Mormons of the latter day I have no slightest cause for quarrel, nor do I doubt at all that they are quite exceptionally moral. Their president has told us so, and he, if anyone, should know. But though of folks in Utah State but 2% lead plural lives, perhaps the other 98 are just their children and their wives. O stern ascetic congregation, resisting all except temptation! While I, for one, can see no harm, unless for trouble one were looking, in having wives on either arm, and one downstairs to do the cooking. A touching scene with naught to dim it, but 50 children, that's the limit. Some middle course would I explore, incur a merely dual bond, one wife brunette to scrub the floor, and one for outdoor use, a blonde. Thus happily could I exist, a moral more monogamist. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Sherlock Holmes by Harry Graham. Read for LibriVox.org by Winnifred Assmann. The French filou may raise his bock, the green goods man his cocktail when he toasts Gaboriau's Lecoq or Pinkerton's discreet young men. But beer in British bumpers foams around the name of Sherlock Holmes. Come, boon companions, all of you, who, woodcock-like, exist by suction, uplift your teeming tankards to the great professor of deduction. Who is he? You shall shortly see, if, Watson-like, you follow me. In London, on the left-hand side, as you go in, stands Baker Street, exhibited with proper pride by all policemen on the beat, as housing one whose predilection is private criminal detection. The malefactor's apt disguise presents to him an easy task. His placid, penetrating eyes can pierce the most secretive mask, and felons ask a deal too much who fancy to elude his clutch. No slender or exiguous clue too paltry for his needs is found, no knot too stubborn to undo, no prey too swift to run to ground, no road too difficult to travel, no skein too tangled to unravel. For Holmes, the ash of a cigar, a gnat impinging on his eye, possess a meaning subtler far than humbler mortals can descry. A primrose at the river's brim no simple primrose is to him. To Holmes a battered Brahma key, combined with blurred articulation, displays a man's capacity for infinite ingurgitation. Obliquity of moral vision betrays the civic politician. I had an uncle who possessed a marked resemblance to a bloater, whom Sherlock by deduction guessed to be the victim of a motor, whereas his wife, or so he swore, had merely shut him in the door. My brother's nose, whose hectic hue recalled the sun-kissed autumn leaf, though friends attributed it to some secret or domestic grief, revealed to Holmes his deep potations, and not the loss of loved relations. I had a poodle, short and fat, who proved a conjugal deceiver. Her offspring were a Maltese cat, 2 dachshunds, and a pink retriever. Her husband was a purebred Skye, and Sherlock Holmes alone knew why. When after-dinner speakers rise to plunge in anecdotage deep, at once will Sherlock recognize each welcome harbinger of sleep. That voice which torpid guests entrances, that immemorial voice of Chauncey's, not his. Suppose Hall Caine should walk, all unannounced, into the room, to say, like Pressman of New York, Mr. Shakespeare, I presume? By name the Manxman Holmes would hail, observing that he had no tail. In vain, amid the lonely state of Zion, dreariest of havens, does bashful Dowie emulate the prophet who was fed by ravens. To Holmes such affluence betrays a prophet who is fed by jays. With Holmes there lived a foolish man, to whom I briefly must allude, who gloried in possessing an abnormal mental habitude. One could describe the grossest betise to this, forgive the rhyme, Achates. 'Twas Dr. Watson, human mole, obtusely, painfully polite, who played the unambitious rôle of parasitic satellite, inevitably bound to bore us like Aristophanes' chorus. But London town is sad today, and preternaturally solemn. The fountains murmur, "Let us spray," to Nelson on his lonely column. Big Ben is mute, her clapper cracked is, for Holmes has given up his practice. No more in silence, as the snake, will he his sinuous path pursue, till like the weasel when awake, or deft, resilient kangaroo, he leaps upon his quivering quarry before there's time to say you're sorry. No more will criminals at dawn, effecting some burglarious entry, while Sherlock on the garden lawn enacts the thankless role of sentry, discover to their bitter cost that felons who are found are lost. No more on Holmes shall Watson base the chronicles he proudly fabled. The violin and morphia case are in the passage, packed and labeled, and Holmes himself is at the door, departing to return no more. He bids farewell to Baker Street. Though Watson clings about his knees, he hastens to his country seat to spend his dotage keeping bees, and one of them, depend upon it, shall find a haven in his bonnet. But though in grief our heads are bowed and tears upon our cheeks are shining, we recognize that every cloud conceals somewhere a silver lining, and hear with deep congratulation of Watson's timely termination. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Aftword by Harry Graham. Read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. Ye critics who with bilious eye peruse my incoherent medley, prepared to let your arrows fly with cruel aim and purpose deadly, desist a moment ere you spoil the harvest of a 12-month's toil. Remember, should you scent afar the crusted jokes of days gone by, what conscious plagiarists we are. Molière and Seymour Hicks and I, for as my bearded chestnuts prove, je prends mon bien où je le trouve. My wealth of wit I never waste on Chestertonian paradox. My humour in the best of taste, like Miss Corelli's, never shocks. For sacred things my reverent awe resembles that of Bernard Shaw. Behold how tenderly I treat each victim of my pen and brain, and should I tread upon his feet, how lightly I leap off again. Observe with what an airy grace I fling my ink-pot in his face. And those who seek at Christmas time an inexpensive gift for mother will find this foolish book of rhyme as opposite as any other, and suitable for presentation to any poor or near relation. To those whose intellect is small, this work should prove a priceless treasure. To persons who have none at all, a never-ending fount of pleasure. A mental stimulus or tonic to all whose idiocy is chronic. And you, my readers, never mind which category you come under, will, after due reflection, find my verse a constant source of wonder. 'Twill make you think, I dare to swear, but what you think I do not care. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. End of More Misrepresentative Men by Harry Graham.